Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much for joining, Rob, to share the experience about, I think, your pretty impressive journey at PostNL. You know, building in the end a journey factory, which in its name alone already I think is very intriguing. And what we always do in the podcast, so the reason I always explain why I was inspired to invite you. And for me that was, as most of the listeners know, for me, and you and I are aligned on that, CX needs to have business impact. So whenever I meet a fellow CXer that starts explaining their role from business business perspective, I say, okay, let's jump on a podcast together. And then just as a start, it's always interesting for the listener just to understand a bit about your history. How did you end up where you are, and what makes you excited to still every day work in the CX field?
Thanks for having me, of course, and nice to meet indeed. I work at PostNL for a lot of years, and I was there in different jobs. I started out with more traditional marketing roles and product management, and what hit me then was that we had to make actions to customers when the return was not enough. So it was more driven internally. And I always thought this is not the way to do. And then when I started at the HR department, because we needed to recruit over 20,000 postbezorgers, so deliverers, because we were changing the whole model. There were people who worked for 40 hours, and we were making a new process where people work like 6, 8, 10 hours. So we needed a lot of people. And at that moment, we needed to think about a complete new journey. I didn't know what it was at that moment, but we started out with the first employee journey. And that was also the moment that I thought, hey, this is really great. And from that moment, I was thinking more about the employee or the customer first in all different roles I was taking up at PostNL. So I was in the online department, the channels, really important to think about what is the customer doing on the websites, etc. I started out innovation management. We had an innovation studio. Of course, it starts with the customer. And after that, starting up UX and CX at the consumer department, which elaborated into the Journey Factory, where I helped, among others, because we had a big team, to set that up.
And you mentioned, right, that you started with the journey and you immediately said, I really liked it. And I'm paraphrasing, but what really made you feel like, hey, this concept of a journey, of thinking from customers and employees, it's adding value?
I think the most is that we had a good proposition at that time. Only when the proposition or the product is great, but the journey is weak, you will not make impact. So it's a bit about the chain. So the weakest part is making the total impact that you can have.
Yeah.
So that's what I really liked about the journey. And also thinking about what is an employee going through in that journey and which parts are the most important. So you will think about that. And that was great.
Yeah, nice. We'll definitely dive into that part later as well. So I think one of the things that I like, so there were a few things that stood out to me when we were having a conversation about, hey, let's do a podcast. And one of those was where you mentioned, I think a lot of CX teams are struggling, feeling sometimes they're pulling a dead horse, right? They're working really hard to convince the rest of the organization. And you mentioned, well, we have decided or chosen that, if the business is not willing to improve, we're just not starting. And can you share maybe a bit about how you got there, but also how do you assess whether they are willing or not?
Yeah, I think the most important decision that was made within PostNL was that it was not bottom-up led, but top-down. And from that moment, it was understood that if something is really important, you need to invest time and money to get research done, to really understand customers, to really understand the pain of the customers, but also from PostNL. And if it gets a priority, well, from that moment you can start to work on solutions. And I think beforehand it was more that we were helping out other teams from a CX point of view. So our service designers were helping a lot of teams, and it was always great, and it was a lot of mapping, a lot of research. But at the end, it were not the problems which were the biggest. So at the end of the week, when they had to decide where do we put the money, it was a lot of times in different problems. So top down, which are the most important priorities, and then really do it good.
And then how do you assess, because I think it's also interesting, because sometimes you also need to educate the business to understand for them how CX can help solve their problem.
Yeah.
So do you have sort of some tips for listeners? Okay, how do you assess when the business is really not willing, or when they might be willing, but you still maybe need to figure out a way to convince them about the value that you're adding?
Yeah, I'm still now in that process. So when we have a department who thinks, well, maybe a journey can be a good solution. Well, it's not a solution. It's a matter, of course, to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Then we always pay a lot of attention in the prepare phase, as we call it, and that is, what is the scope, what is really your problem, and what is your target or your goal. And if we understand that goal, we go back to them and we say, is this really important, and how important is it? Will it get prioritized every time that we come back, when we have understand the problems and we found out solutions which will cost money and time? And if they say yes to that, then we can start our journey project.
Okay. And then in your experience, once you've done that properly at the beginning, you don't often have, okay, but halfway then they say, sorry, by now we don't have any budget anymore for what we decided to do.
Yes, that's going much better.
Okay.
So what I notice is that when you start, everybody is very enthusiastic and they say, oh, that's great, let's do it. And you are researching a lot and there are beautiful findings. But at the end, they say yes to too much things. So after a while, they have to say no to somebody.
Yeah.
And then it's, of course, very handy if you researched in the beginning, in the prepare phase, is this really a pain point for them? And are they going to say yes every time you come back to them? Yeah.
So you challenge at the beginning pretty clearly to say, is this really a business priority for you?
Yeah, and actually, if everybody or I feel that it's not important enough, then I think we have to be honest to each other and say, let's not do it. Because also the people in the teams, in my team, service designer or business analyst, in other teams, product managers, they will start a project which will not be finished. And I think that's very, very frustrating for them. Yeah. So, it is the least you can do also for your team and, of course, for PostNL itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the end, also just a waste of resources, right?
Yeah.
So I think, having heard your story also when we chatted, I think it feels to me like PostNL really has embraced, right? Looking at things from both employee and customer perspective. Do you have an idea of why, sort of what happened that they embraced this? And is this something that you and or your team actively did? Or was it something that was already maybe in the culture of PostNL?
No, we were really helped by a large consultancy company to change that perspective. So it was more product-led, and when we started the digitalization, it was a big topic to understand that product-led is not the only way. You also need to get the customer lens into that perspective, into the transformation. So you have the IT lens, the product lens, and of course the customer lens. So we ended up in an agile model actually, where we said we will have product teams, but we also have journey teams. And these journey teams, they are figuring out what needs to be the target journey for this customer group and this offer we have. Otherwise, we will be too much focused on what we already have. So also the scope of journey teams is like 3 to 5 years. So a target journey in 3 to 5 years, how does it look like in that future? and which are the bold moves, the big changes that we need to make to get there. And I think, and maybe you also experience that in your work, that it's a lot of times it's easier to get little improvements done. I see you smile, so I think that's what I hear back a lot from other companies and people, because big changes need a lot. It's a lot of work, and everybody is busy. So small changes are easier, but that's not the way to really change. And I think that a beautiful phrase there is that if you pick these journeys and you can change them, in a while you can change the whole company. And that was a beautiful start of the Journey Factory, I think, yes.
And you know, sort of, because a lot of listeners are struggling with how can I convince my organization to see the value in CX, right? And we'll talk later also that we both feel that also the CXer needs sort of to sometimes be reflective and look in the mirror. But do you feel, was there something, because you mentioned it was an external company, but was there something like a sense of urgency within PostNL, or did they see, I don't know, the huge potential? Was there something that convinced them to also not only do it temporarily, but really embrace it?
Yes, of course. Well, PostNL was really facing more and more competition. So that was one, of course, but also we have a proposition that we have a customer experience that is differentiated from the other competitors. But what is differentiated then? So we need to be different than the others, and we are and we were different than the others. But how can we, put that in all these journeys so that customers will recognize that difference, and that they are willing to be more enthusiastic about us. And of course you can measure that in the NPS figures. So that was I think the most important step, to understand that we need to do something on that field. Yeah. Competition
tends to be a good, let's say, way to enhance the urgency, right? So I think also many companies feel we're pretty okay. So it's nice to have an A+, but it's not really super urgent.
Yeah.
So I think that's a helpful additional power, right? That you can play around with.
Yeah. Yeah. And the second thing is that we really started off with the digitalization. And one of the things that I also recognize a lot is that when you start digitalize things, that you take the as-is situation and you digitalize it in the as-is situation, but in a new technology. And we wanted to do that differently, and I think that was really smart decision of the executive committee of PostNL. Yeah.
To really redesign it and not just make the digital twin of the non-digital journey.
Yeah. Which is easier but less effective.
Yeah. We were already just mentioning a bit, right, that we're both a bit critical about existing CX teams and the business impact that they are making, right? They're not bridging the business side of things, right? They're too stuck in their CX tunnel, so to speak. What do you see in other organizations, and what do you feel are you guys doing differently that others can learn from?
Well, I noticed both perspectives because when I started off with CX, I was really glad that if we had a service designer or a journey owner which was called or requested into a project of the business. So we were more a CX expert team. But after a while we understand and we notice that we can help them, but we cannot drive it. So that's frustrating after a while. So I see that a lot of times back in other companies. You have a great CX expertise center. They're doing a wonderful job, a lot of insights, a lot of journey maps. But the business is not really working with it as possible. So I think the big change is what we did is that if you set up a journey team with a mandate and a journey owner, and you put the business people into that team alongside with some experts, you're working together across the silos on a very important topic, and that is really different. So it works much better. Yeah.
And you see now also, because I think one of the key things that you need to prove is that, so just I think last week we recorded a new podcast where I was also saying to flip the perspective around, right? Instead of a lot of CXers are super excited and are super committed, right, to the customer. So they start bringing the insights, right, to departments. I said, just let go of all your insights and just start having a conversation, dear manager of Department X. What are your top 3 business issues? Right? And then revert back, okay, how can CX tools or EX journeys, whatever, help your business goal?
Yeah.
And to really practice what we preach and focus on your internal customer, right? And understand their needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think CX is, especially also journeys and research, is a means to get somewhere. And to get somewhere, what is the somewhere? What is that? What is the goal? So where is the business, waking up from in the middle of the night? You need to know and you need to understand that and use that to get aligned with them. And then if they see that and they think your means is really helping them, then you can start actually the project.
Exactly. I see, right? That your toolkit, whatever methodologies, is helping them solve the problem faster or better than if they would do it themselves.
Yeah, and I think also really a lot of CX experts, they are, maybe it's in their DNA, but they want to be 100% correct. They want to be
Do not experiment too soon.
They will not come out of the room before everything is perfectly, and that's, I think it's sometimes a bit too much. So start these conversations with the business early to really understand what they need, what is their problem.
Yeah, and maybe even that conclusion might lead to you needing to research something completely different than you're researching on your own right now, right?
That's it. Yeah.
You also shared that you are using, let's say, a pretty clear framework, right, on the steps that you go through from figuring out what has priority until actually redesigning it.
Yeah.
And instead of just going through all the steps, can you sort of elaborate where you feel, having also spoken to other companies, but looking at our framework, I think these, 2-3 steps are really crucial that I see that other companies or CX approaches are missing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is different because it's actually the double diamond. But the prepare phase is crucial. So the prioritization. So is it really important and is it more important than other things? So you need to have an executive committee or top management to decide on some projects that they want to do and some things they will say no to. That's the first really important step. I think another one is that you need to come back to top management with go, no-go moments. Because after discovery, you can, maybe you didn't find the pot of gold. So maybe you say, no, we thought it was big, it was 1 or 2 million, but we didn't find it actually. So let's stop. So also after discovery or after design, you will come back and you will have a fair and honest discussion about do we need to continue. And I think that's great. I always tell it when I talk to other people. Business is not saying yes to a project we will lead 3, 6, 9 months. No, you will come back to them, and then if it's not there, you can stop. So I think that helps also.
Yeah, I think the stopping also at the beginning, right? Also, I think feeling that the business feels that you are sort of not invested in it too much, right? We have to do this. No, right? We can also just not do it if we don't feel that it's adding value, and that, I think, just completely changes the conversation, right? Then you're both looking at how can we create something valuable together instead of, and I'm making it black and white, right? Instead of I have a CX team, I have journey managers, and we need to keep them working, right? That's the other perspective.
Yeah, and maybe there's another important thing is that you need to have, of course, good people in your team with different skills, but we call it functional leads. It's really important that there are people in your team who can take the designs or the features or the bold moves into their own teams after working in the journey. Because a lot of times the building is not done in the journey team, but in the proper agile building teams, IT teams. So somebody needs to bring that into the team without these huge handovers, because then it's a lot of times lost in translation. So I think that was an important lesson for us as well. Yeah. So you have to think about your team in the prepare phase already. So if there is a priority, you say, okay, that's great. Then I need these people for these hours a week and with this knowledge. So
I think also there, right? If go ahead, sorry.
No, I said do not be too soft on that one also for yourself, and so help yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's also a good testament to, if they are really willing and serious, they will also, be okay with making sure that people and time is made available.
Yeah, and it's always a challenge, because at the first time they say, yeah, we will do, and then it's not 16 hours, it's like 12, 8, 4, because they have to do more projects. Yeah, so it's not always, it's not always fun.
Breeze.
No.
What's the project that you are most proud of, and what sort of impact did you make with that, you and the team make with that project?
I think a project which I really like is, we call it in Dutch, navraag at de bezorger, or ask the deliverer. That's from our I Get Help consumer team. And actually it is, maybe you will notice this also in your own experience. You get the parcel, or actually the app of PostNL says, hey, the parcel is delivered, but you don't see it.
Okay.
So what happened over there?
Yeah.
Actually, you need to go to customer service of PostNL, but you can also say, hey, can I ask the driver himself? So the driver will get a notice from, hey, what did happen at your street at number 42? Yeah. And then they can say, oh yeah, I put it into the
next to the garbage bin on front.
Garbage bin, etc. Yes. So that's of course a great mechanism to get the delivery done, to get more happiness, and the knowledge is available at the driver. Before that, it was not possible because we couldn't make the connection. We thought, hey, is this okay that the consumer and the driver will have contact with each other? Actually, we are just facilitating that, and I think that was done by a lot of teams, because technically it was really difficult. And it was a lot of times tested, and what is the driver thinking about it, what is the consumer thinking about it. So it was a very good, brilliant project to improve failed deliveries, to improve the NPS, to reduce, of course, the investigations at the customer service. So really proud of that team and all the people that did it, yes.
Yeah, and I can also imagine, just thinking, placing myself in the shoes, that also for the drivers it's nicer to have some more direct interaction with customers, I can imagine. Indeed,
it was also measured, so the satisfaction of the driver was improving itself. Also.
Yeah, nice.
And actually, that's of course great. So it's good for your cost, it's good for your customer, and it's good for your employees. Wow, that's in the middle.
Exactly. I would say it's a win-win-win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which we always say, and I think most cases, right, we've proven this many times as well. So yeah, I think that's just nice. I think, right, if it's done well, there's no debate about the benefits. I think the struggle is, how do we make sure that more people do CX well, so to speak, right? That really we enhance the value that we're making to the business. And I think you already mentioned, right, the delivery guys and girls, which I think is a bridge to employees, right? You started from the journey of the employee, and you're now also again looking at the employee journey. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, it's good to be back. Of course, we are still working on the customer journeys, but now there is a lot of interest from the employee side. So starting off with the parcel drivers, guys and girls, indeed, yes, because PostNL is also a process-led company. So a lot of decisions are made from the perspective, is the process going to improve? A lot of
logistics, right? I can imagine.
Yeah. But if we are looking at it from the perspective of the driver, and in this particular case we were looking at the drivers who were leaving. So we interviewed a lot of drivers that left the company. What are the main things that made you make that decision? And we dived more into that, and then we thought about a new target journey. So what can we change in the process that is helping the drivers to be more happy and more satisfied and stay at the company? And it's great because the drivers are very willing to help us out. Of course, we can test at all the depots here in the Netherlands. We can validate really good, and we can also do a really good benefit tracking afterwards. So if things are really moving better. So one of the bold moves we thought about is that there is a lot of knowledge in the head of the drivers. So maybe you live in a house where you can put the parcel best in the back garden.
Yeah.
So the normal driver will know that, but if he is away on vacation or he will do another route, is the other one also knowing that? So we call it crowdsourced route information. So share these things with your colleagues. One of the examples, which is helping PostNL, but also helping that, driver which is not aware too much of that route. To be on time and can pick up his kid from school or whatever he or she needs to do.
Nice example. We didn't prep this, so shoot me if it's too spontaneous, but I was thinking you've already achieved a lot, right? So what is sort of your, let's say by maybe end of this year, what do you still hope to achieve?
What I really hope is that we can connect the customer, consumer or business journey even more with the employee journeys, because the employees are making the experience. So bringing them more together, that would be great, I think. So I think that's something which need to be looked at more and more.
I think so. We're also more and more using when we analyze the customer journey. Let's say, I don't know, I want to open a bank account. Then we'll say, hey, make sure you also do the shadow employee journey who needs to deliver, right, that journey of the customers. There's so much triple win there as well. Final question, Rob, to wrap it up, right? So probably our listeners are into CX and they might be recognizing some of the struggles that a lot of them are facing, right? How do I enhance my business impact? Is there a or more golden tips that you can share for them?
I think I already discussed it, but don't start with the customer. That's a bit strange, but start with what is important for the business, and then bringing in the customer. I think that's a tip that I want to stress again. I think, and that's difficult enough. So let's keep it to that golden tip. What do you say?
We leave it at one very large golden tip.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. I always ask at the end, anything you feel that we forgot to cover, or you want to say, hey, Zanna, but hang on, we forgot to mention something, or do you feel that we covered most of the topics we wanted to discuss?
I think we covered a lot, and I think we can discuss a lot of things more, but for now this is completely fine for me. Yes.
Perfect. Where can people find you? On LinkedIn if they are curious and want to learn more?
Yes, LinkedIn.
Okay.
Would be great, and open for discussions. I meet a lot of colleagues and different companies to discuss and to learn, because keep on learning in this field, because it's really a struggle and we are in it together. So I'm completely open for that. It would be great. Yeah. All
right. Well, then, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
My pleasure. I hope we shared a bit of inspiration again for the listeners. So thanks so much, and we'll share it soon.
Great. Thank you.